Good evening, everyone. I hope you can hear me. My name is Oliver. I'm from the IELTS group, and I'm glad that you're all able to join this scheduled Zoom meeting. So the session will take approximately 1 hour. And in case it drops, you can just join back using the same link that you used to join this one. In order for us to have a good engagement, we'd urge you to log in to www.menti.com and then enter the code that is appearing on the screen, which is 280976. We will also have a Q&A session at the end of this, at the end of the presentation. So we kindly request you to note down your questions and then reserve them till the end of the session. We also urge you to remain in mute throughout the session, so that we can get the most out of this presentation. So for now, let me welcome Ben Siele to take over from here. Thank you, and I hope that you will learn something. Welcome.
Thank you, Oliver, for the introduction. Good evening, everyone. I hope you can hear me clearly. Welcome to this session, and which has been arranged by the IELTS group. So from IELTS group, we're actually trying to put together some of the topical areas which we can share. We can bring expertise to really discuss more and help particularly the youth and the SMEs, the startups, to improve themselves, improve their businesses. So I believe at this time you're actually doing well, even under the circumstances that you are observing the Ministry of Health guidelines, and that you guys are doing well. So again, welcome to this session. We're really glad that you are able to join us. So today we would actually like to go through job search and career pathing techniques. Quite a number of us sometimes struggle, particularly with this topic. How do you go about getting a job? How do you go about being in control and leading your career in terms of your career growth? How do you take control of that? How do you engage the stakeholders? How do you engage your line managers? How do you engage your coaches and mentors? So hopefully this session is actually going to help us to try and build some more light and share some techniques on how that is done. So, like you've heard, my name is Ben Siele. So I've structured this presentation into two. I'll be going into this job search techniques and tips, and then we'll then go into how to grow your career, particularly for those of you who already have entered into the job market. Then how do you grow from that entry position that you have into that position that you aspire? Like Oliver has mentioned, please log into www.menti.com, and when you are prompted for the code, please put 280976. This will allow us to interact and have at least some participation in the course of this presentation, because at some point in the course of my presentation, we're going to ask some questions just to have a feel of how this is happening. Now, in terms of setting the stage, in terms of setting the stage, I would like to, just mention that the whole issue about job search may not be as easy as it seems to be, because job seekers often don't know what to do to secure a job. yes, you could have actually secured that technical training in the university, in college, but really convincing the recruiter, convincing that company manager to employ you is it requires tools, requires approaches that will really make yourself sell the skills and really stick out in the course of the presentation. It's very critical that you understand how to go about that, so that you can transform the skills that you have, that you've actually gotten out of the training that you have, and go out strongly out there, convince the people who make the decisions in terms of the selection, that you are actually the right person, that looking through the qualifications that you have, looking through the requirements of the job, then that can actually be aligned. Number two is that you need to take control. A number of us sometimes will leave out this task to our parents, to our politicians, that, oh, I've given my parent to connect me to somebody and that kind of thing. You have to take control and drive it yourself, because it's all, at the end of the day, it's really about you. Therefore, you need a structured approach, actionable steps, and the willingness to see this through. Definitely, with a very high unemployment rate in the country and even globally, it can actually be very, tiring sometimes, and it can discourage sometimes. But you really need to have the perseverance. You need to have the stamina to really see this through till the end, until you actually get that job. Now, we like you. Then we are moving on to the next, and I would like just to have an idea on the participants. I can see we're about 30 of us who've actually logged into this meeting. So again, let's go to menti.com, like what appears in the screen, and then take this survey or take this vote. Yes, are you unemployed? Are you employed? Are you self-employed? You can give it a one minute or so. Yeah, I can see, people are voting in. Yeah, so there's one person who is self-employed. Most of us are actually employed, 4 people, which is about 50% of the participants, and then unemployed are 3. So which is good. I don't know whether anybody else is joining in. Please take a vote, and then we can just have a feel, so that as I do the presentation, I know the areas of emphasis as we go through. So thank you for this. For the majority of the people who are employed, I know the second part of it will really be very relevant to you. But even then, even the first part, in terms of just putting together the necessary approaches for job search, will equally be good. So let's move on then. Let's move on to the next part of the presentation. You find sometimes, particularly the youth, they are asked, what are you doing? Then they say, we don't have a job. Now, if you don't have a job, then your job is to find one. It should actually concern you, so that right from morning, when you wake up, your big concern is really to go about finding a job if you don't have one. So you then need them to be, putting your to-do list in the morning, in terms of then how am I going to go about looking about around for the job? Who am I going to meet? Which channels or which sources am I going to look out for, just to ensure that you actually continue well. So in terms of the process, I would like to share with you 5 steps that you actually need to have when you are doing the job search. It's normally longer, but for the sake of this, I actually have condensed it to 5, so that we can actually go step by step. How can you apply these techniques, these tips? One is that you need to identify your target. Then you create a compelling marketing campaign. You do research. You do networking. and interview. How do you then go about the interview process? So we'll go step by step then. The first step is identify your job search target. It is very important that you are clear, or at least you have some clarity on where you want to target as you go about looking for a job. Your answer to the question, what kind of job are you looking for, shouldn't be any job. You need to have some bit of idea in terms of, I want to get into this industry, I want to get into this function, I want to work in this location, and that kind of thing. So you really need to have some clarity. Having said that, I recognize the fact that currently you really may not have a choice when an opportunity comes before you. So considering the very high unemployment rates in the country. So, but still you just need really to have an idea so that it kind of helps you to focus. It helps you to narrow down on the specific areas that you want to work in. So defining your goal is what kind of job do you want, and then defining the industry. And when I talk of industry, there are certain industries that you may be willing to work in. There are others where you could actually struggle working in those industries. Depending on our faith, some of us actually struggle working, let's say, companies like EABL, companies like BAT. So when you are clear in terms of now, these are the companies that I can actually work with, then it really helps you then to focus. Number two is the functional department. Do you want to work in HR? Do you want to work in finance? So you really need to be clear in terms of the department that you want to get into. Number three is the location, the geography. If you are posted today to Mandera, are you okay with that? If you are posted to Mombasa, if you are posted to Nairobi, so there are certain preferences, personal preferences that you could be having, and you need to then to be clear in terms of the location, or should an opportunity present itself. So while doing that, you need to be careful not to be too narrow, not to be so wide. You just really need to have a good cluster of the job targets that you want to run after. Number two is creating a compelling marketing campaign. And this is an area where I want to spend some bit of time, because it's so critical that you develop a brand that you are going to sell, that you are going to convince the potential employer or the recruiter that you are actually the person they are looking for. So one of the things that comes up here is the CV. So I'll really spend a bit of time with the CV, how to go about it, what are the components that should be there. So I'll spend a bit of time. There's also the cover letter, the online profile, and then what you call the networking pitch. So in terms of the cover letter, sometimes we struggle. What is the difference between the CV and the cover letter? What should the cover letter contain? So basically the cover letter, expresses your interest, demonstrates your interest to work with this company, to work with this employer. So you are now expressing that strong intent, or that strong interest to work with this organization. So by bringing out, that feeling, by bringing out that great interest that really connects with the organization. So there are a number of things that you really need to be looking out for. What are they interested in? Looking through their job advertisement and that kind of thing. Number two is the online profile. Quite a number of organizations these days have actually moved to digital platforms in terms of their recruitment processes. So you'll find that rather than you sending a CV, they actually want you to populate their template in their digital platform, so that they can then filter from their end. Number two is that there are also online profiles like the LinkedIn, you know, some professional profiles like LinkedIn that you may need to build that can easily connect with the potential employers, because occasionally recruiters are looking for specific skills or specific individuals, and they can actually go to the LinkedIn, for example, and hence you really need to build a very strong CV. You need to build a very strong profile that can attract the recruiters whenever they are actually searching. Now, having said that, the other thing that I wanted to bring very strongly is that you need to be very careful what you put in the online platforms, even the social media. I want to call out the Facebook in this case. Normally, in the course of their selection, recruiters can actually do their background checks. They just want to have a feel, you know, who is this kind of person, who is this individual that you could have actually presented yourself very strongly, but they just want to see, you know, even in your social platforms, you know, what kind of information do you share. So you need to be very cautious what you share in those social platforms like Facebook, to avoid what is called digital dirt, because it can paint a negative picture about you, a negative perception about you to potential employers. So you need to be careful. Finally, I want to talk about networking pitch. How do you articulate your value proposition? And this is especially when you are given a very brief moment. Sometimes you pump into, you know, very high-level individuals. You know, they could be managing directors of organizations, they could be directors of organizations, they could be ministers in government, and people who can actually make decisions and help you. So when you meet, and they normally give you maybe even a minute or less, what is that pitch? You know, how do you articulate yourself in the span of less than a minute? You need to prepare a very strong networking pitch, or what we call elevator speech, that you can actually talk about yourself very strongly. What are your strengths? You know, what is it that you're looking for, so that you can easily connect with them. Having said that, let's now go to the CV. And I know this is an area where people have actually been struggling. How do we write a CV? How do we, you know, make it stand out? So a well-written CV requires a number of things. One is the quality. Quality in terms of its presentation, in terms of, you know, the content, in terms of how it flows. Number two is the clarity. It really needs to bring out very clear description or components about yourself within the CV. And finally, accuracy. Whatever is contained in the CV should actually be accurate. Don't overstate. Don't overrate yourself. You know, as you actually put the CV. So whenever you have a well-written CV, there are things that it will actually represent. One is that it represents you when you are not there. When you send out your CV, to a potential employer, or whenever you are making a job application, the CV will actually represent you when you are not there. Hence, it really needs to have captured in a very summarized way, but yet quality, yet clear, yet accurate about you, so that whenever that person receives, then they can actually make some good decision. The CV also quantifies your accomplishments. So in terms of the structure, one of the components of the CV is your accomplishments, because employers would like to see, have you been able to accomplish certain specific deliverables or things in the past? And if you have, then the chances of you coming to accomplish even better when you are brought on board are higher. So they want to see that connection. So you really need to present that. It also clearly states your abilities. This is yet another component that you need to have in your CV. What are your abilities? What are your abilities? What are those things that you are actually able to do? What are those skills? The other thing is it shows your command of the written word, because communication is key. Communication is key, and we're talking about quality. We're talking about clarity. So, how have you, packaged the CV? How is it? Are there spelling mistakes? Are there grammatical errors? Do you do spell checks? At the end of putting together the CV. So those are critical things that you need to put through. It also creates talking points for your future interviews. Imagine a situation now where you've been called for an interview. Definitely the CV will actually form a good basis for talking and engagement. So you can be asked, there is this particular accomplishment that you've stated in your CV. Can you tell us more about this? So that way, it can, you can continue now to articulate yourself. You can continue to put through and share, your accomplishments as that proceeds. The other thing is that it proves your worth to your past employers. So definitely, as you put down your accomplishments, the abilities, and what you've been able to do in the past, then it really shows your worth, that you've actually been able to add value to that organization in the past. And then it demonstrates what you can do for the future employer, and particularly the one maybe that you are engaging in. It will actually show that you are that bit of potential. Quickly, I just want to share with you kind of a structure skeleton of a CV. So you need to have the CV header. The CV header this time needs to, you need to have your full name, you need to have your address, your postal address, a professional email address. And I've really deliberately put the professional there. Just make sure that you have a professional email address. Sometimes you get applications and they are fancy email addresses. Make sure it's professional. It really presents a positive image about yourself, and then the phone number. And in all these, make sure these are actually contact details that you can be reached anytime. Number 2 is the career objective. You need to be clear in terms of what is it that you want to achieve as an individual in terms of your career. So you need to have a reflection, think through what are those areas that you really want to build. So that in the next few years you actually working towards, because that will actually show the potential employer, the kind of person that you are. Are you looking up to certain achievements, in the course of your career? Then the next one is, then you now need to list your educational background. So list colleges or universities and training that you've gone through, starting with the most recent. Okay, starting with the most recent. So if you've just completed the university or you've just completed your master's, then then it goes all the way maybe up to secondary level in that order. Then now you need to bring in the work experience, and now this is very critical, because this is the point where the employer would like to see what is it that you've done. What are those things that you've actually accomplished? What are those responsibilities you've been holding, so that they can gauge and see, are those have you demonstrated kind of some level of fit to what they're looking for? Have you demonstrated fit to the position that they're recruiting for? So you need to have that now. So start with the most recent. Again, the most recent position that you held, or the most recent company that you work for. Then you start from there, and then to the one that that you started with. And in each of them, you need to kind of to describe some 3 to 7 bullet points describing your responsibilities in each of the positions that you held and the results of your work. We talked about accomplishments. So this is the point now where you'll actually be putting, when you are holding that position, what were the results? What were the accomplishments that you were able to achieve? Because that is, in fact, of all the the components of the of the CV, this carries a lot of weight, because this is an area where the recruiters or the potential employers will actually be looking at most of the time. Then there's skills and additional information. What kind of skills do you have? What interests do you have? What certifications do you have? Make sure you actually mention there. And then the referees or the references. And in the references, the thing you want to bring out is that ensure the person you've listed as your referee, you've actually sought their acceptance. You've actually contacted them that you'll be listing them. Now, in terms of order of this structure, if you have some experience already, then proceed to list experience before education. So what I've posted on this screen is actually for a fresh graduate. You know, you've just come out of the university or the college, and you really don't have a lot of work experience. So education will start first. But if you have experience, then that will actually switch position. So work experience will come first, and then education then will follow. So I hope that helps. I hope that that clears. Very interesting statistic that I wanted to share or information. Did you know that most seasoned recruiters scan a CV in about 7 to 10 seconds? Actually, less than 10 seconds. When they are presented before them a CV, they can actually tell one that is good from one that is bad. And basically, by ensuring that you've built in the areas that I've just described in the previous slide. So make sure that at every point you actually take time to review your CV, to make sure that it's actually presentable, so that it gets the attention of the recruiters. Because remember, they're actually receiving thousands and thousands of applications every other time. So they may not have time to be, you know, going through each and every one of them. They can scan through and they know which one is good. Now let's continue now with the steps. Step number 3 is conducting in-depth research. This is really, really critical, and particularly for the organizations that you are applying for. Make sure you take time to get more information about this organization. What is it that they are, you know, they are working on? What is their vision? What is their mission? What is their strategy? What are the big things that they are currently running after? So that even during the interview or during any engagement that you may have, then you can actually be talking about things, about priority areas that they've elevated or they have highlighted in their websites, in their brochures, in their flyers. So definitely there are sources that you can get this information. The website is so rich with information about organizations, you know, what they're working on. So make sure you do in-depth research about those organizations, about the positions that you are being interviewed for, because that will differentiate you. When you go to an interview panel and you can be able to articulate and show, you know, interest with what they are working on, with the things that they're working on, that will really give you a good position. The other thing is that it enables you to prepare talking points, because, you know, during the interviews you can then be able to engage them, ask questions to the panel, because you already have an idea of what they're working on. And then the last thing is that it enables you to find and start relationships, because when you bump into somebody, let's say working in Safaricom, working in Unilever, and you know what they're working, you know, their priority areas, you know, it really creates a very good ground to engage and talk about the organization. Step number 4 is network. We talked about the networking pitch, but I want to really point out that networking is really critical in this day and age, because you really need to identify people who can connect you, people who can help you to identify potential opportunities, people who can give you information. So people naturally want to network with people they know, they like, and they trust. So you need to, you know, look out for these people who can actually connect you to people, who can connect you to opportunities, who can connect you to organizations. It will also help you to gain insider information before things are public knowledge. So if you know somebody in a certain organization, you've networked, you've built rapport with them, they can always tell you, next week there is this advert that will be coming out, or we are going to be recruiting for this position. So that way, it will really build your possibilities, and you can easily connect with them. It also it gives you an opportunity to access individuals you otherwise might never meet, because somebody may connect you to somebody else, and that way you'll actually enrich your network as it were. You'll be able to know news before it reaches the general public. Like I've said, people can share with you insider information before it becomes general knowledge. Effectively participate in a panel discussion or a task force whenever you are called upon, because already you've actually built networks that will work for you. Number 5 is master the interview. Now, we've talked through this process, right from identifying the target, building a strong marketing brand of yourself. We've talked about research. We've talked about network. Now, mastering the interview is the point you really shouldn't lose. You really need to kill this opportunity with a bang, because assuming that you've actually been able to be shortlisted, you shouldn't lose out at this point when you've now been invited for an interview. So there are things that I would like to call out here. When you come before the panel that is interviewing you, there are things that you really must master, that you really must know the tips of your fingers. One is that you need to know yourself. Most of the time, the first question is, can you tell us more about yourself? So what is it that you are going to talk about? So you shouldn't be fumbling. You need to be very clear, in terms of, and basically it will actually show, it will actually follow the structure that we shared in terms of the CV. You need to talk about your key accomplishments, your key experience, and knowing or having in mind the position that you are being interviewed for. So at every point, you need to be calling out the key areas that the position requires. So have you had any experience? Have you had any skills in particular, in specific areas that the position requires? So you need to be calling out that. You need to be calling out those specific competencies, those specific behaviors, so that you start creating a good perception, to the panel, because that is most of the time that's actually the starting point. So you can, the panel can easily lose you out at this point if you seem to be struggling to talk about yourself, and yet this is a clean slate, an opportunity for you to really give a very strong brand of yourself. Number 2 is know your CV. We've talked about the CV at length, and we've talked about clarity, the quality. We've talked about accuracy. Now, at every point, make sure you've actually familiarized yourself with the content of the CV, because occasionally you give out to professionals to help you do the CV, but you don't revise, you don't actually go through it. And the moment comes before the panel and you're being asked, can you talk about this particular accomplishment that is listed in your CV? And you don't seem to have an idea. And that is really embarrassing, and it can really raise a lot of anxiety, even at that very point, which is already anxious anyway. So you need to be very careful, read through, reflect about each and every content of the CV, and make sure that you can be able to talk about it. And finally, know the company. Know the position that you're being interviewed for, know the industry. So what does the company, and this really, connects with what we're talking about, research. What is the company, chasing after in terms of their priorities, their strategies, their vision, about the position, what are those expected deliverables and responsibilities that the position will actually be required, and also the industry. generally. What are they facing? What are their challenges that they are facing, which probably you'll be expected to come and help in terms of resolution. So that's very critical, and definitely whenever you've actually mastered these particularly these 3 areas, it builds your confidence. At every point you're actually going into that room for the interview, and you've prepared, you've made sure that you've gone through the CV, you've highlighted the accomplishments, the experiences very well. It really builds your confidence before the panel. Now, let's now switch gears. So, hoping that this first part has actually been helpful, we now want to switch gears to now, assuming that you've actually been interviewed and now you are getting into the organization, you are starting your career. And also this brings in the people who are actually working. How do we build our careers? So, assuming you've actually gotten into an organization at an entry position, what do you aspire to be in the next 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years? You've gotten in as a finance assistant. Where do you want to go? And you really need to be building those ambitions. You need to be building those aspirations to say, where do I want to go? Because it's only healthy, and it will actually push you to really make certain steps, certain actions to actualize your dream. So professionals can grow their careers through 2 things. One is through the current employer. You can grow from one career point to another with the current employer. And there are actually people who've been in organizations all their life. They've never changed because, they got those opportunities to grow, maybe up to very senior positions. The other opportunity is with another organization. So you can get into one organization, but then you prepare yourself for even bigger career moves with another organization. So you need to have and be cognizant of that. Now, there are 3 main reasons why organizations will hire a candidate. And you need to demonstrate that as an employee, as a candidate. One is that they believe that the candidate is going to make money. Remember, organizations is about vision, it's about growth, it's about profitability. And whenever they're hiring someone, then they actually need to make sure that they're going to add value. They're actually going to help them in terms of their vision, in terms of their priorities. So they believe that this candidate is going to make money, is going to grow the business. So you need to have that in mind. The other thing is that they believe that the candidate is going to save money. We've talked about profitability. We've talked about efficiency. So do you look out for those opportunities to close maybe certain leakages within the organization? Can you bring in efficiencies just to make sure that the organization can make can save money? Because through that, then they're actually going to improve in terms of their growth, in terms of their profitability. And finally, they actually believe that the candidate is going to add value. We've talked about growth. We've talked about efficiency. So how are you going to build in efficiencies? How are you going to be building innovations within the system, within the organization, so that they continue to add value, they continue to grow, they continue to be profitable? So those are some of the things that you'll be looking at, and you need to have this in mind, that even as you build and develop your career path, as you aspire to grow within the organization, then make sure that you are aligned to the expectations and the belief of the company or the leaders within the company. You therefore owe yourself a career path plan. We've talked about, you've gotten into an organization as an entry position and you want to grow. So what that means is now you need to put put a plan in place in terms of how then you're going to actualize that. And that is called a career path plan, or what you call career pathing. So career pathing is a process used by an employee to chart a course within an organization for his or her career path and career development. So you'll actually identify, like, this is actually going to be the steps. No, this is going to be the jobs that I need to do in order for me to be ready to take up now the position that you actually are running after. So how do you develop a career path? How do you develop a career path? One is take a look at your desired jobs or jobs within your organization. So that's the first step. How do you need to be clear. This is actually the position that, in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years, I'm actually looking for. So you need to have clarity of, let's say, the organization structure, the organizational chart, and know the jobs that exist in that organization. If they're not present in that organization, then what about in other organizations within the industry and that kind of thing. Number two is chart a course through jobs and departments with the help of your supervisors, your HR. That is the most likely career path that will let you achieve your goal. So, so this is now where mentors, this is where coaches, this is where leaders within the organization, HR will come in, because they know the dynamics that normally play out. They know your strengths. They know what you are capable of. So they can actually help you in terms of putting this together. So make sure you involve them at every point when you are doing that. Now, this may require lateral moves, departmental transfers, job promotions along the way if you are to achieve your goal. So sometimes you assume that you can actually move, let's say, from a finance assistant position straight to a finance manager. That is normally the mentality so sometimes people have. So what you need to know, or what you need to realize, is for you to move and eventually occupy that office of the finance manager, then it may require lateral moves. For example, maybe you're actually in a position of cash management. Then you may need to go to pay, accounts payables, you may need to go accounts receivables, you may need to go about controls and that kind of thing. Because when you look at the role of a finance manager, they actually need to build the breadth of all these work streams. So in terms of your moves, then you may need to really deliberately request to make these lateral moves in preparation for, taking up this finance manager position. So it will require that. It may also need to make departmental moves, from one department to another, because maybe you want to build depth in specific departments to prepare you to take up a general management role, for example. So you really need to understand kind of what really happens across departments. So departmental transfers may actually be another thing that you need to think about. Job promotions, again, in preparation for taking up higher responsibility. So take that in mind, so that as you build your plan, you need to have that. That is not just a one move. It may actually require quite a number of avenues. Number three, the other point is that it requires that you develop skills, pursue employee development opportunities, and obtain certain experiences. And I think we've actually articulated in that previous point. So as you actually do the lateral moves, the departmental transfers, you actually want to own home the certain skills that are required in that position that you are aspiring. You need to pursue employee development opportunities. Maybe there'll be training opportunities that you need. There'll be projects that you need to be part of as part of, developing yourself and getting ready to take up that position. Finally, coaching from your supervisor and mentoring. I've actually mentioned about coaches, about mentors. This is actually a very critical component of career development or career pathing. You need to identify leaders or managers or experienced individuals who can help you to share their experiences, who can actually help to hold you along the way. they'll be talking about areas to avoid, make mistakes, areas to avoid in order to fast track or accelerate your growth and that kind of thing. So at every point, make sure you actually identify and formally engage these mentors, these coaches to help you in your growth. Now let's get back to this, and I would like to ask, at this point, now that we've talked about it, do you have a well-written CV? Do you have a career plan? Do you have a career plan and a CV, or you're not sure? So again, let's take a vote and see. Thank you. Thank you for those voting. Yes, so good. Looks like most of us actually have a well-written CV. And maybe the area that we probably could be struggling is the area of career plan. And I hope what I've been able to share will actually help you to shape or to structure one that is actually going to deliver, or that is going to help you to grow. And also the area of the CVs that we've talked about. Good. So while I've talked about the career plan, while we've talked about what the organization will be looking out for, there are things that you must have while implementing your plan at every other point. One is that you need to have the right attitude. The attitude that it is possible, the can-do attitude. You always need to have to find the reasons why something can be done and not reasons why something will not be done. So you need to carry with you, the right attitude, because that will actually elevate you in the eyes of the leaders of the organization, and will actually endear you to them. Number two is the energy. When you wake up in the morning, when you are actually going about the business of the day, do you demonstrate energy? Do you really bring out the energy that is actually required? So you always need to make sure that you sustain very high levels of energy, high levels of interest, high level of enthusiasm in whatever you are doing, in whatever engagements that you have across the organization. Number three is being open to instruction. You will definitely be working with supervisors, with managers, with people will be giving instructions. Are you the kind of individual who will actually demonstrate, show that attitude that I know it all? Or do you listen? Do you get to hear, or the instruction, or what kind of guidance that is being given, and then you can engage and you can then follow up? Finally, is going above and beyond. The most, or actually every organization will actually like to see people going over and beyond, what their job description entails. Are you asking for more, even after you've completed whatever you are doing? Are you the kind of person who is 8 to 5? You just come in at exactly 8, and when it's time to leave at 5, you just leave, despite maybe the pressures, despite even the kind of pressure that the organization is going through. Maybe there are a lot of things that really needs to be completed. Do you reach out to help others even after you've completed yours? Because that demonstrates the kind of attitude that you are looking for. And so you really need to be very cautious, so that you're not seen like, you're just doing the very bare minimum for the organization. Make sure you go over and above what your job description entails. So what's next? I hope so far so good. So what next from here? Because we've talked about a number of things. How do you then move and start putting together, the job search techniques that we've talked about, the career growth tips that we've talked about? How do you actualize that? How do you put them down? So What I want to share is that you actually implement at least some of the some of the tips that we've shared in terms of the job search. Can you go back and look through those components that we've mentioned, so that you stand out, so that your CV stands out, so that even your network really starts to work for you? Can you really reflect and just go back on that? Put your career plan, career path plan in writing. So can you filter through and just have a document with timelines, with specific actions, with specific KPIs that you can actually go back to? Because that way you're actually going to hold yourself accountable. You're going to hold yourself accountable at the end of the period, so that you just see the benefits of these deliberate moves that you're going to have. The other thing is, you own your career path plan. So it's not owned by the organization, it's not owned by HR, it's not owned by anybody else. You need to realize that you are actually the owner, and you need to be on the steering seat in terms of your career plan or career path. So go out there, make sure you engage the people, the stakeholders in this game. Make sure you ask the necessary questions, you actually ask for the necessary support, and really go about it. And I can assure you, within the next 1 year, within the next 2 years, at least you can see some effort and some fruits coming through. So thank you. The other thing that I wanted to mention is, you can also reach out to us. So as an organization, the ELS group is actually there to help you, further or develop specific discussion points, one-on-one discussions, helping you in specific areas that maybe you are struggling in. So in terms of our career development function, we actually help in terms of CV writing, to polish and to clean out the CV, like we mentioned. The other thing is interview coaching. Occasionally, you've actually been called to an interview, and you're not sure whether you've actually prepared. So we can help you do some coaching, some possible questions. How are you going to answer them? How do you position them? And even how do you position even the question, tell us about yourself. What are things that you need to call out? And then also we can also help you to build your online profile, particularly the LinkedIn, to really stand out and be able to attract the attention of the recruiters. We also do, as ICE Group, we also do corporate HR consultancy and training. So you can always reach us through the emails, info@icegroup.co.ke, that's on your screen, or the number. You can always call us anytime through the number that is indicated on the screen. So reach us anytime. We can actually support you, we can work with you, we can help you in your career journey. Thank you. So that really brings me to the end of the presentation, and I would now like to go to questions. Questions are actually coming in very fast. So go to the Menti and post your question there, and we can actually be able to go through each one of them. Number one is this question. Thank you for this. Is there a recommended period within which one should change jobs? Is it a factor of consideration during recruitment? Good question. Thank you for that. Is there a recommended period? No. Because like we've said, there are people who can actually work for one organization all their lifetime, or all their, within their career lives, and others will change jobs. So one thing is, you actually need to be looking at what is your career ambition. Does the current organization provide those opportunities that you're looking for? So if they do, then yeah, it may actually be a good reason for you to stay on and start building your career from that point. So changing jobs even within the current organization. So the period within which you can actually change jobs for, because we are talking about building the depth. We are actually talking about building the depth in every work stream or every position, so that you're actually ready for that particular position. So we are talking about maybe within a year, maybe you're actually building the depth, building the skills, building the experience within a particular work stream or a particular position, and then you can change for another, but having in mind the goal, okay, where you actually want to end up in. Is it a factor of consideration during recruitment? Yes. Sometimes actually you are asked, where do you want to be in the next few years? So the recruiters will actually like to have a feel of your ambition, of your aspirations, so that they can be like, is this somebody whom we are likely to retain, or you'll start looking out for opportunities. And if you've actually demonstrated good fit for this organization, that they can actually help. They can actually help to build you in terms of your career journey. So I hope that that question is answered. Thank you for that. The other question is, please say something about keywords in the CVs. Thank you. So very critical, and particularly in the area of experience and accomplishments, what we normally say is you really need to bring out very active verbs in terms of what you've done or what you've been able to achieve. So I've contributed this, this level of percentage in terms of the achievement of this project. Active verbs, doing what that you're actually able to accomplish or to deliver in whatever position that you held. So make sure that those active verbs are really brought out very, very strongly in the course of your CV. Thank you for that, and I hope that helps. The other question, if I want to change my career, should I include work experience that's not related to the new direction? Good question, thank you. Yes, you never know what experience will actually add value to you. So make sure you include everything, because maybe in the course of that experience that you had, which may not necessarily have been related to this, it could actually have helped you in a certain skill, in a certain competency. So including it definitely will help you. It's a plus. So yeah, strongly recommend that you actually include that. Thank you, and I hope that is answered. The other question is for a cover letter. How can it be made to be more appealing to the employer? So thank you for that. On the issue of the cover letter, sometimes one thing to note is sometimes recruiters or employers may really not take a lot of time, particularly on the cover letter. The tendency is actually to go to the CVs. But however, the requirement for most job adverts is that you actually have your application letter or the cover letter, and then the CV. Now, like I mentioned earlier, the cover letter is critical in terms of expressing the interest, in terms of expressing that intent to work for this organization. So you should really bring out your feeling, the strong feeling that you want to work with this organization. So that the skills that you have, the skills that are required for the job, the kind of employer that you are applying for, you kind of paint a very good picture about their brand, their employer brand, what they are doing, and how that connects with yourself or your ambition, because that is how then you'll actually demonstrate connection and strong feeling to join them. So I hope that helps. Next question, how do you improve confidence during interviews? Good question. And confidence is actually very critical when you are going to before the panel and you want to present yourself. So you really need to build the confidence. But as you are all aware, getting into that room, brings in a lot of anxiety. So the things that I've actually called for when we were talking about the interviews is actually critical. Make sure you've actually prepared. Make sure you've actually prepared in terms of knowing yourself and preparing to deal with that question. Tell us about yourself. So you know yourself, you know what is required of that job, and then how can you connect? When you are talking about yourself, how do you connect to the requirements of the job? Knowing about your CV. Knowing about your CV will really be key in terms of running and engaging the panel members. And then, of course, then being really being accurate and being honest about the questions that are being asked. Thank you for that. The other one is, how can I tell when it is the right time to move jobs? So again, back to I think the first question, so you really need to be reflecting on, like, are you making the necessary moves that you need? Is the current organization helping you in terms of presenting those opportunities? When you look at the structure, do you look are there opportunities that you can actually grow into? So if they are not, then it could actually be a time to then think like your next move and that kind of thing. Thanks for that. How do you ensure that you have a consistent career growth and career path? Should you keep switching organizations when looking for a job? Should one consider the brand or the job title or the salary? Thank you again for that question. So again, it goes back to what we're looking for in the first place. In the first question, and also what we talked about when you are saying your targets organization when you are looking for a job. Does those organizations appeal to you? Does it connect to your ambition? Does it connect to your vision? Does it connect to yourself generally? Because we're talking about there are certain organizations you may not work for. Now, there are benefits, there are opportunities that organizations will give their employees, and those actually will develop the brand image or the employer brand for that organization that will make it appealing. So you really need to be clear. What is it that you are looking after? So could it be the job title? Because sometimes you're actually working for a small organization with a big title, or you'll rather work for a big brand with a title which may look small, and yet maybe the compensation is better. So you really need to be looking at the mix of things, and particularly what appeals to you. But what I want to call out is you need to be looking at the bigger picture, or the more long term. Where do you want to grow, and does the current organization present those opportunities? Thank you. Good question. Maybe I'll answer another two and then we can close. Please share a sample of a career path plan. It's all new term to most of us. Okay, thank you for that. So I can share with you a sample or a template that you can actually use for your career path plan. Please drop me an email through info@ilesgroup.co.ke and I can be able to share with you the template. Thank you. And then how can you go about offering part-time consultancy successfully? Good question. And also one that you need to be cautious about because you need to make sure that you are giving it your all. Remember what you are talking about, going over and above, going over and